do you think it's going to, like, you know, if we don't see any positive price action, because a lot of people have been complaining about the liquidity being so low at this price, like, do we know, like, some of the strategies we can do to get us above backing? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, you can't go into depth because you don't want to be front on potential buybacks.
I think that we're going to see how the bonding goes, and my hope is that when we have bonding and we start accumulating bonding, that'll get our momentum back. But it's really it's hard to predict. We will shift the liquidity over to FUSD and potentially make changes on that. So instead of having a fourth MIM, you'd have four FUSD. And separately have some FUSD liquidity. So that's the.
Will there be the MIM liquidity as well still? Or?
No, we would convert it over.
Okay, so do you see any issues with people getting Fortress DAO if they have to get into FUSD first?
Well, you can always do a multi-hop swap. Just like even before we had the AVAX liquidity, you would have a AVAX MIM and then MIM Fort swap. And that would work fine. You might have to use Power Swap instead of Trader Joe because they have smarter routing. But ultimately, as long as we have deep liquidity on the FUSD MIM pair on Curve or something, then there shouldn't be any issue with swapping directly from other pairs into Fort through FUSD.
So there's going to be an MIM FUSD pair, so that will solve that issue.
Yeah. It's probably going to be on Curve or potentially. I'm still trying to see if we can partner with some other places. Plan is to have some. I'm going to support the liquidity for FUSD, and the FUSD is going to be strictly pegged at $1. And so there, if it diverges too much in either direction, we would just directly monetize that and either buy back or mint more and sell if it in order to hold it at peg. So I don't even think we need that much liquidity because of the arbitrageurs. So you could have a few 100,000 in liquidity for FUSD, and that should be enough to keep it around peg and have people can do transactions there.
Yeah. So essentially, you're planning to launch in a couple of days, along with like a Medium article, and hopefully, like with the bonding that you're releasing. Along with you've already mentioned earlier, strategic buybacks, we could get the momentum going again, because it won't take, obviously. But when we do the FUSD launch, is it going to be like a new LP launching on the same day, or are we expecting that over the next couple of days?
I'll have to see. Probably I'll launch, and then we're gonna have a whole list of things that need to be done, and at some point we need to transfer over liquidity, and this will be clearly signaled in advance. You know, either we'll add the other one and remove this, or we'll see. Shouldn't be issues there.
All right, cool. Is there anything else I guess, that you think that you could share with the people that are here? Just
Shibumi here. Avi, can you explain how this works? So we have MIM now. We will convert MIM to FUSD. It will still be in the Treasury. How are you using that FUSD to rebond? And
so it wouldn't be that
price
FUSD. So when you put MIM into FUSD, the FUSD Treasury now has MIM, and it can use that. It can use that to create more FUSD and then use that FUSD to bond in the cycle.
So our second bank buys Fort or mints Fort.
Yeah. In the cycle, and then you have both of the treasuries increasing together, and right now you have something like 15 million, and if you just loop that a few times, then you could have both of those treasuries 50 million plus. And you'll have high TVLs, and you'll have and I'm just hoping that you do that and you create great momentum. But we'll see.
By what you're saying, you could essentially, you reckon you could leverage the MIM with the FUSD and basically double the backing price.
Well, it's double the backing amount, but there would also be more tokens. So the effect on the backing depends on more details like the dilution and the price and so on. But the main effect that we're going for would be to significantly increase the treasury and loop it, and then you have the treasury would capture some of the value from the token being below backing, and you'll see how that works once you have the bonds released.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense now that you've sort of verified that. You basically just leveraging the MIM with the FUSD and bonding Fort at the same time. So could we potentially see some burns with the bonded Fort as well? Or
sorry, could you repeat that?
After you do, say you do the leverage and get more FUSD and you burn some of the Fort from when you bond it, do you see potential burning some of this Fort that you're minting?
Would have to look into that. The problem is FUSD is supposed to be backed, so we'd be backing it by the Fort that we bought, that we minted. But if you burn that, and then FUSD is under collateralized, and then it doesn't help the Fort Treasury if they own FUSD that's not backed.
Yeah.
The whole point is the FUSD has assets worth $1 for each, and then so the idea is that if FUSD can buy Fort below backing, then that creates risk-free profits for FUSD, and then that produces yield, which then go back to all FUSD holders, and the largest FUSD holder is the Treasury. So it's the cycle.
Yeah. Now that makes a lot of sense. I'm actually looking forward to it coming out. So, we're definitely seeing this.
Just quickly, Primo. So, so this means actually next week the FUSD bank wants to buy Fort at $7 up to, let's say, 20, right? And then make this arbitrage gains. The same thing you suggested you would do with Snowbank. You want to do it on Fort.
Yes, but in a slightly more complicated way, because the Treasury and FUSD are connected in the sense that they're going to each hold each other's token. So once we enable the 4-4 bonding, which is important because otherwise you have different dilution rates, and then if you don't properly get the right backing amount, and it depends on the APYs, you need to have the 4-4 bonding so that the price can so that you got the proper rebases in during that time. But once that's set up, we would you would basically mint a bunch, and then you would immediately book that as a profit on the FUSD side, and then you turn that into yield, and you pay that back into the FUSD holders, and they get yield based on whatever that amount is, and you can loop that as many times as you want. I mean, the idea would be loop it over gradually, and we'll have to see the parameters to see how the market reacts to when we first start doing this, and how much you can actually capture. But this is that's what we've been working towards. An answer the question.
So how does the Treasury realize the yield between the difference in the bonding price of Fort and the market price of Fort if it doesn't do anything, if it doesn't sell the Fort sometime down the line or burn it or something like that? Can you explain that part?
It wouldn't get burned because that would just redistribute value to everyone else, but then the FUSD lost value. I don't think it would strictly sell it. Maybe if Ford has some big pump and you're overbacking and you have deep liquidity, but I think that the idea is that you can just keep it on the books of FUSD indefinitely at backing, and like eventually, if you have more withdrawals from as long as the Treasury is keeping its assets in FUSD, there wouldn't be that much or any really withdrawal pressure except if outside investors come in. But you would limit this to the amount. That's the only real way that you would be forced to sell the assets if the Treasury winds down and liquidates. And in that case, then FUSD would be able to capture whatever the backing value is then in that scenario, and then return that. And so I feel as long as these projects are connected in that way, then the FUSD is not at risk, and it is able to account for any such bonds at book value. But you're right that there's no immediate way to redeem it, and we don't have any plans for any immediate redemption at backing. But I think that when you have two interconnected projects like this, we can do the valuing thing in the way that I described, and use that to pay yield. And in the end, it's fully backed. And in the worst case, you can there can be some kind of redemption. But again, that's I'm not saying that there's going to be any kind of redemption or at any particular timeline. Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Jojo, did you feel like your question got answered?
Yeah, yes, I'll think about it some more. But yes, generally, yes.
It's a really interesting cycle. It's I haven't seen this specific model done, but I think it's very similar to a lot of the stuff that MIM has been doing.
I wanted to ask, could you add this as a service potentially for what MIM's doing, essentially, like with Fort holders? So imagine with staked FUSD and also wrapped staked Fort, you could offer minted FUSD as a way to. So I don't want to sell my Fort, but I could leverage against it and keep my Fort to staked. Is that something that can happen?
I think if we would do that, it would have to be with a separate coin. I don't think you could do that with FUSD because of the particular structure of FUSD. We definitely have been discussing about maybe after this launch, maybe we would try to do an Amber clone, and then we could enable something similar. I haven't looked into how difficult that would be, but that's probably a more substantial project that could take some time. So we haven't officially decided that we're doing it. It's just one of several ideas that have been floating. So I would not count on anything like that anytime soon. But we have been considering. There's been a few ideas that people have been throwing around. Just different forks of different projects, the Tomb forks and node forks. And once we get this project launched, we can look into seeing which one of those other projects are interesting. We can fork some of those as sort of spin-offs from Fort and figure out some way to funnel value back into the Fort ecosystem. But there haven't been any particular things decided on so far.
Does anyone have any questions?
I'm going to go get off and do some work.
Yeah.
I just have one question.
Oh, wait.
One quick question before you go, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Sure.
Would it be possible for us to maybe have those voice calls scheduled once a week so we keep more in touch with what the arts of them are doing the other side?
Someone should take charge and schedule them with me. And I'm down. I mean, I just popped in because I saw that there was, a bunch of people in the chat and I had some time, so I figured I'd pop in. But if you want to schedule them more consistently, I'd be happy to coordinate around that.
Yeah, I could help with that with Shibumi, and just doesn't have to be long, but just something like this for 15, 30 minutes where we just have these discussions. I think it would be good.
Yeah, I think it's good.
We'll communicate with you, Abraham, and organize a time that suits everyone, and then we'll go from there. But I'll leave you to work.
Okay.
But thanks everyone for listening in for this unscheduled community chat, and hold strong and share the alpha. Let people know what we're building. I'm gonna probably head off now too. It's getting pretty late.
So Primum, Shibumi here have final thoughts. It's a bit complicated. I also like Giorgio Rainet to think about it. But he's simply making this price arbitrage, right? So he's buying for $7-8, something which is worth $22. What actually the market is not doing now, right? Could have done, right? We could all buy below Treasury level at these prices. Probably no one has money left. But so actually, this is what he is going to do.
He is an I don't know if anyone is aware. Before I do go, Abraham's really well known for really smart arbitrage opportunities. He did a recent Medium post on some of the things he did. I don't think everyone's read it, but when I did read it, I was like, okay, this guy is basically like he sees value that can be extracted from low risk arbitrage opportunities everywhere, and he's actually building a team to scout these different opportunities for the Fortress DAO ecosystem. So obviously, when you're one person, there's only so much you can see within the crypto ecosystem. And as he builds a scouting team to find these arbitrage opportunities, he can't guarantee any numbers, but he was saying, like, as you know, some of these arbitrage opportunities could be at least 20%. Profit for the DAO. So when you think about, like, as the Treasury grows, 20% is a decent APY for something that is, low risk and high return. And, there's no crazy looping like UST, but I'm sure as the Treasury does grow as well, you could potentially see like even more expansion with reasonable leverage with the Treasury itself. So yeah, I'm even more bullish with the news with the using FUSD to buy back, and keeping the FUSD backed with a fort at the backing price. It actually makes a lot of sense. I see the price right now is a pretty good buying opportunity. Not financial advice, but $7.84. Yeah, that's pretty good. Anyway, I'm going to head out. Thanks everyone for chiming in, and we'll see you at the next one.